defend your rights, your constitutional right to keep and bear arms, regardless of what a hostile Obama administration may try to pull here in the future. Thank you.
Just so you know, I was a Secret Service agent, and I retired 2 weeks before Mr. Obama took office on purpose, because I wasn't going to stay there. Second, I'm an NRA lifetime member, and the only problem I see with this is that you guys are going to have to come to that Joe Corley jail that was built for us, but now the feds own it, and get me out, because that's where they're going to put me. Because I'm going to make sure that they don't come up here and take our weapons from us, ever. So, yes, I will defend your Second Amendment rights. Along with Rand, we'll be standing side by side to make sure that we don't have a problem from our federal government coming down here with an unauthorized presidential order to seize our weapons or do anything else that would violate your constitutional rights. So we're going to make sure it happens. And if I have to go sit in the jail cell, no, so be it.
This is for you, Jim. Would your first budget submitted to Commissioner's Court be larger, smaller, or the same as the current budget? Explain why. Explain your answer.
Well, it's probably going to be larger because much like Mr. Henderson just said, we need an increase in manpower here in this county to get the job done, to get it done correctly. And there's no other way to do it than to analyze the crime statistics, to look at the population growth of this county, to see where the population is growing in the unincorporated areas. But you know, we talked about just the unincorporated areas. Well, I'm a chief of police of a small incorporated area, and there's many times my officers are running out into the unincorporated area to assist the sheriff's office and vice versa. So, you know, I don't look at boundaries as far as how it works. You're the sheriff of the county. You know, there may be a Conroe Police Department here, but we're still going to assist Conroe PD or any other police department in taking care of what the crime is in our county. And unfortunately, we can't get the criminals to obey the county line either. So they come across from Harris County, they come across from Waller and everywhere else and come into Montgomery County. So we need to understand that our budget's going to have to increase. I mean, if we have 525,000 people living here already, with more to come because they're building another new hospital right down the street here, I mean, we're going to take people to man that hospital and patients and everyone else. So our budget's going to increase with the people as this county grows. So what we need to understand is, how do we do that? How do we do it properly? How do we do it where we give the best bang for the buck to our citizens? So we'll have to look at it, analyze it, understand what we're doing, and go before Commissioner's Court every other Tuesday if we have to and say, gentlemen, ladies, this is what we need to get our sheriff's department to run properly. So we could talk about, you know, cutting budgets in certain areas where we find fluff. We need to put men and women on the street, and we need to keep deputies still in our jail. You know, taking the deputies out of the jail and gives it a difficult time for those civilians that are working in there, because now sometimes those inmates don't respect the civilian employees that we have as much as they do when they see that badge, when they see that uniform, and they understand, hey, that guy's a deputy, and 2 weeks from now I may encounter him on the street, so I may not give that person such a hard time. So the budget will have to be analyzed, and then once we analyze the budget, I'm sure, you know, I'd be lying to you if I told you, oh, we're going to cut the budget 25% and we'll still be able to do the job. Unfortunately, my old agency, the Secret Service, did that, and then they ended up having problems. So we won't do that. We're going to look at it, tell it what it is, and go up before county commissioners and give them the right story. You know, it's up to you, the folks, to understand that if you want protection, if you need a police officer there in less than 25 minutes, then you're going to have to look at getting the right amount of manpower to do this job. Thank you.
In order to address the budget, we've got a new program that's coming into the Sheriff's Office called Spillman Technologies. It's a great tool that our leadership team has been working on for many years. It's an integrated justice system. This integrated justice system is going to bring new data analysis tools to the Sheriff's Office that we've never had before. So I plan to first use that. It should be live very soon to see where we stand and what inefficiencies we can root out by directing patrol versus randomly patrolling. using that crime analysis data. But what I do pledge to you is that I will always look at the sheriff's office budget and try to reduce in any area that we can. The problem is that our budget is very labor intensive. So that means salaries. That's the majority of where our money goes. And with it being as big a budget it is, the largest budget in the county, most of it does come to salaries. We look always to grants when possible to try to supplement, as long as there's no strings attached that we can't stomach. And we try to enhance the budget by using other methods. But efficiencies in the budget will come out through analysis and continued analysis. I'm not a proponent of the way our budget system is laid out now, to where you got your budget, you got to try to spend it all at the last minute sometimes, because you don't want to run out, and that's something we've never done, is have a budget overrun. So we wait till the end of the year sometime. I want to budget all year long. I want to look at where we are all year long and prepare for the next budget. And it's not a cycle that we go through where it's craziness around March. We want to have a system where the administrators, my command staff, are constantly questioned about their budget, and it's looked at to see what the true needs are and what the true needs are in the future, to try to reduce our impact on the county's liability as much as possible.
Carl, can I rebut that real quick?
Absolutely.
Or just another statement. I just want to say that I both worked in the public and private sector. I understand that, as Rand just said, this is manpower intensive. So we always want, when we dial 911, for the brightest, smartest, most trained, most effective police officer to show up at our house. Sheriff's deputy, police officer, whatever you want to call it. When it gets there, you want it to be able to solve every crime as fast as they did on CSI. Boom, they got it done right away. But you're going to have to pay for that. If you start paying salaries that are just barely breaking $40,000 a year to these young men and women, and ask them to stay here, they're not going to stay. They're going to get their training and they're going to go someplace else. So Rand is correct. We need to understand that if we want something and we want a good product, we have to pay for it, we the citizens. So I want folks to understand, it's not that we want to increase the budget, that we want to take the money from you or come out there and do a tax increase. But the job of being the sheriff in this county, to give you the protection and the things that you need to pay our employees the right amount of salary so that we keep them here for 20 or 30 years and they're not running down the street to some department down in Houston to get a better salary so that they can support their families better, because in the end, that's what a call comes to. Can we support our families? And the other shame that we do is we work extra jobs. And these poor guys are getting killed out here, and they're working real hard, and then they go and work another 12 hours at some extra job so they can make enough money to get by and pay their mortgages. So, folks, it all comes down to money. It matters what you want. You're the citizens. What we want to do is provide you the best we can and give you the best product we can for the money that you pay for. Thank you.
I agree, and our salaries have come a long ways. When I started, I was making $21,000 a year. I took a pay cut from TDC when I came here. Through the current leadership, we have made great strides in our pay, and part of that is a salary structure. And that salary structure is intended to keep the tenured employee longevity. Do you want a rookie showing up that doesn't know anything, that has to call on the radio and ask for help just because he's new, or do you want that seasoned veteran? And I think everyone would probably answer a seasoned veteran that knows what he's doing, who's been there and done that. And that's who we want among our ranks too, all the way up and down the ranks. So we came up with this salary schedule that is intended for nothing more than longevity. Because you can see, even in difficult times, that you've got a step schedule, or a step that's coming, so you can make got a little extra money that's coming. And that maxes out at 16 years. And the advantage of that is you've also got promotions whenever that step schedule. The chief mentioned the jail, and the deputies in the jail. I'm a firm believer that we made a very good move by replacing some of our highly skilled, highly paid, as far as the scale goes anyway, jail deputies with civilian detention officers. When I worked in the penitentiary, I wasn't a cop. Nobody that works with those convicted felons at the Walls Unit or any other penitentiary in the state of Texas is a cop. So there are specialized functions within the jail that being a police officer is advantageous. And so we tried to move those into those specialized positions, and we did it with your taxpayer dollars in mind. We replaced some of those deputies with lower paid, but still skilled, because we do lots of training to ensure that we got the best personnel that's working in the jail, because that's the sheriff's largest liability. And so we moved those deputies either into patrol, into bailiffs, we put them in transport, in areas where their specialized knowledge is necessary. And we're working to continue that as we move forward with our salary requests, trying to be as efficient as we can with your taxpayer dollars.
All right, gentlemen. Texas jails have become the state mental hospitals. What, if any, programs or policies will you continue, discontinue, or implement to address this growing issue?
Who's up? Me. I'm sorry, I can't keep up when we do this rebuttal thing. So, absolutely, and it's widely known that the Harris County Jail is the largest mental institution in the state of Texas. That's wrong. That's a problem. Mental health leads to recidivism, and recidivism leads to more taxpayer dollars being spent to house and feed inmates. The number fluctuates, but it's somewhere around $50 a day that you're paying to house these inmates. And a lot of them are coming in on petty crimes, and a lot of them are related to their mental illness. Some of them that are staying more longer term, we're getting an opportunity to work on their mental health. We have, when I took over as the jail captain, we were barely working with Tri-County. We were having a hard time even getting our mental health assessments done when they came into the jail. If they said that they were wanting to kill themselves, there was no mechanism available to get them off a suicide watch because there wasn't a psychiatrist on staff. So that's something we worked really hard, was to bring in mental health professionals, and we're trying to do it as efficiently as possible through telemedicine. So we're trying to video conference them in. They can see what's going on with the inmate, make the assessments. We have a doctor on site as well as a nurse, so if they're going to be there for any length of time, we can get them the prescriptions that they need. And the mental health assistance through Tri-County is now present in the jail. That wasn't there for many years, and through cooperation with Commissioner's Court, they've now been mandated to work inside the jail to assess our inmates. They had refused to do that at one time. So we've come a long ways. A lot of our mental health and medical care are paid for through the Inmate Commissary Fund. Inmate Commissary Fund is funded through a percentage of all inmate purchases that they make through the commissary. So if you buy extra t-shirts, if you buy food, soups, sodas, whatever through the Inmate Commissary Fund, a percentage of that is moved into that fund that can be used for the safety and security of inmates. Well, part of the safety and security of inmate issues that we have deals with mental health. So we've been able to use those funds, which are inmate monies, not your taxpayer dollars, to try to get them the mental health and medical care that they need. And I think we've made great strides, but we still got a long ways to go. There's not many people that you see committing these heinous crimes that don't have a history of mental illness that have been allowed to walk around the streets next to you, your neighbors, where you shop, and where you work. So to identify them, get them the help that they need, and it's not a short process. That's what's difficult. There is no panacea magic pill that works. But there are options that I'm willing to embrace, any new options, anything that might work to reduce inmate recidivism, particularly when it comes to mental health, is paramount to the success of the jail and the sheriff's office. Thank you.
Well, folks, you know, this is a question that's actually come up several times, and other people have asked me this. And the first time it was asked me, I was a little taken back. So I did a little research on what goes on. And I think, you know, you asked me earlier, what would I do on my first day? That would be one of the things I do on my first day. I would take a look at what we're doing, and then I would assemble a group of businessmen and people that understand it, that work in the jail, and we would get together and understand we got to come up with a solution. And you know what? We would come down and visit Harris County, and we'll go to other places like LA County Jail, to Nevada, and visit the Clark County Jail, and look at all these other places that are having the same issues that we're having. Study what they do right and what they do wrong, and see if we can implement that as quickly as possible so that we don't have that problem, so that we're not being dinged by the state of Texas on what we're doing and how we're not getting meds to our mental health patients and why certain people aren't getting access to their relatives when they're in jail. So what we need to do is look at other jails that are working well, try to implement things that are being done right, and learn from other folks, not just try to contain this all inside Montgomery County. Find out what is done right, don't reinvent the wheel, just take somebody else's great idea and let's implement it. Thank you.
Run out of time, so I guess this is an opportunity for a rebuttal. A couple other programs that we currently have is a MAC court, which is a mental health court that works to divert our inmates. So when they come in, there's a person that assesses their mental health status to see if they would be eligible for a PR bond or something to get them out. So that has worked well to divert inmates from the jail population, so we can, one, reduce overcrowding and get them out and get them the help that they need, because a lot of the crimes that they committed are petty, and if they don't have an assaultive history, having them on the street is not a danger to the other citizens. So that's a big move that we've made, and the MAC court was just funded once again this court cycle. So we're not diverting a tremendous amount of inmates, but if you can get one diverted where he doesn't recidivate and come back and take up that jail space, that's really, really important. Thank you.
All right. Do you support the legalization of marijuana in any capacity? Explain your answer.
No.
Sorry.
But seriously, we're looking at what is happening right now in Colorado, and it's not going well for them. And so again, let's study someone who did it before us, and they're not doing well. It's not working out like they want to. The legalization of marijuana doesn't help us. It doesn't lead us down the path. Everyone says, well, it'll make the state more money. Well, they're finding out that they're still doing illegal sales of marijuana there in the state of Colorado. So it didn't change any of that. All it did was give people the legal right to smoke marijuana and then still go out and try to operate a motor vehicle. And it makes it more difficult for us in law enforcement to figure out who's doing it. And they're coming up with new methods now that you can test someone who's been smoking marijuana. But now that gives us, you talk about the budget, now we're going back out there trying to get more money to get more equipment so that we can figure out who's driving intoxicated on marijuana. So it really is just a domino effect on this legalization. I don't think it helps us out in the criminal justice system either. So if you want to decriminalize it and make it a ticket, I still think that doesn't give enough penalty to going out and selling it. And unfortunately right now, the school district in which I am the chief has an extremely large problem with the amount of kids getting synthetic marijuana. So everyone is going to be very surprised and disappointed if we make that an issue. I don't think that that's something that we should legalize at all.
Nor do I. I don't advocate for the legalization of marijuana. I see no benefit to it. I see it as a dangerous substance that does need to continue to be regulated. It's often used by the youth. Just like truancy isn't an issue for adults as they age out of school, marijuana is mostly a drug of the youth. That's where we mostly deal with it. So we now have the opportunity, with the new legislative cycle, to cite and release, which is an advantage with our jail population, because we're bringing people in for a joint, which we want them to face criminal penalties, but I don't agree that they need to be incarcerated overnight, dressed out, all the expenses that come along with them becoming an inmate. Not to mention, it's introducing really young people into the criminal justice system with a Class B misdemeanor. So that is a gateway that gets them into the system, that makes it very difficult for them moving forward to get good employment. So we want to address it at the youngest age as possible. Synthetic marijuana is our bane right now. That's the one that's very difficult because it's sold in bright light stores. You can go into a convenience store and buy any number of brands, and this stuff is totally unregulated. What it is, if you're not familiar with it, it's nothing to do with marijuana. It's a substance, a tea, an herb, mostly manufactured across seas, and then there's chemicals that are put into it. Although the packaging may be consistent, the product when tested is not consistent at all. So you may have one batch with a low grade of chemical and another batch with 10 times that amount of chemical. in the same package or in the package right next to it. So kids don't know how to use it. So we're seeing a huge increase in overdoses. I've been working with Dr. Escott, with the Director of Public Health, to start to address this. We're going to begin addressing it with the District Attorney's Office as well. And my fear is not the old school marijuana, it's the new synthetic marijuana as we move forward. Thank you.
All right. Do you support the use of drones? If not, why? If so, explain how and under what circumstances would they be used?
The Sheriff's Office does have a drone. We use it for, well, we don't really use it much right now, but when we do deploy it, it's going to be for issues such as the wildfire that we had. I was the incident commander for the huge wildfires that we had in Magnolia. I know there's some Magnolia residents in here. That was a traumatic event for that part of the community in 2011. So we had to go up in helicopters, we had to go up in airplanes. The smoke was a huge problem for the aircraft, not to mention the expense to operate. So I would advocate use of the drone in situations such as that, to scope out the landscape, to see where the hot spots are, to help the fire department and the sheriff's office with traffic control and dealing with the issues moving forward with that disaster. I would also support it in search and rescue situations. So if a person is lost in the national forest, which is something that happens very routinely, hikers will get into the woods and they'll run out of water or they won't be adequately prepared. They'll lose their cell phone service and they'll be missing for dangerously long periods of times and really adverse weather conditions at times, whether it's extreme heat or cold, whichever it may be. So that would be a good opportunity to go up over the treetops and look down and try to find a search and rescue victim. I would not advocate using the drone in any situation that violates your Fourth Amendment. I don't believe in doing any routine surveillance, any proactive surveillance. It would only be directed as needed in a situation, mostly for search and rescue and those type of situations. The problem we have is, I don't believe, is going to be your local sheriff's office using the drone. It's the number of privately owned drones that we're having to deal with. Just saw one go onto the U.S. Open Court just the other day. Somebody was flying it around and flew it right into the court. They could have been hanging bombs on that thing or whatever. So the private use of drones and somewhat the commercial use of drones is what really terrifies me moving forward. It's not your local sheriff's office. Thank you.
Real quickly, I don't believe that the drone should be used in a capacity where we should be looking for someone on a search warrant or an arrest warrant. That the drone is there for exactly what Rand said, public safety in a situation where we're doing search and rescue, and that's about it. Maybe on a wildfire, but that's a search and rescue situation also. So other than that, the drone should be parked, it should be supervised, it should be known to the public when it's going to come out and when it's going to be used. And simple as letting the media know, we're going to take the drone out and we're going to fly it today, and this is the area that we're going to fly it in. But that's the only time that I think that the sheriff's office should operate it, in life and death situations where we need to use it to find a lost person. Other than that, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. As sheriff, how will you ensure the fair and legal treatment of your county's residents? Be specific.
Be specific. The fair and legal treatment of our county residents. That has to do with properly training over and over again your officers and your employees in how we take care of business. And it's very simple. I was an agent assigned to our James J. Raleigh Training Center. I was there for 3.5 years. I was the senior instructor that instructed in use of force to not just the new agents coming through, but all the ones that had to come through for what we call force shift training. So if you were there and you had 12 or 13 years on the job, you had to come in and sit and listen to me do an hour and a half on use of force. Also, we would bring in our attorneys and they would talk about the Fourth Amendment and the Second Amendment and having to deal with doing the job properly. So how that happens is really simple. You don't go 3.5, 4 years, 5 years with never seeing the inside of the training division. You're going to be there once a quarter, and we're going to set up a program where you are outlined on which courses you're taking, and you may repeat it over and over again, but we're going to drill it into your head that you understand as soon as you make that traffic stop, as soon as you go to that house and knock on that door, that you're not without probable cause asking to search a vehicle, asking to come in and search a house. You get to that door and you think, well, I could just go in this door and see if I could find that evidence because I think it's in there, but you don't have probable cause to know so. You're going to walk away. You can say, well, we're just going to have to come back another day when we have better PC to get in this house and we get a search warrant that's signed by a judge. So that's what I plan to do, is use training, education for the employees to make sure that they understand where they're going to cross the line and that they don't. Thank you.
Carl, could you repeat that question? I don't think I heard it right.
Okay, I moved on.
Don't be jumping ahead on me now.
Hang on just a second. As sheriff, how will you ensure the fair and legal treatment of your county's residents? Be specific.
Okay, so I guess we're addressing this as a use of force issue on our citizenry. We train every day. There are outliers that don't apply their training or do the wrong thing. And we work really hard to root those people out of our department. We start off by rooting them out in the application process. And a lot of the times, if they do make it into the department, the cream rises to the top, but in this case, the bad apple rises to the top. And we weed them out as quickly as possible. I don't hesitate to fire and remove somebody that doesn't fit our department philosophy. I'm the training director for the Sheriff's Office and have been since 2010. And I work with Lieutenant Ken Culberth on a daily basis to ensure that use of force is taught, use of force is applied, and use of force is carried out properly to protect your individual liberties and rights. We have brought in enhanced training, not only with firearms, but also with hand-to-hand combatives. So the officers know what it's like to get hit. We have people that come to the Sheriff's Office that come to be a police officer that have never been hit before. They've been in outside agencies. That's why we hit them with tasers, so they know what it feels like. That is a high-level use of force. You ever get hit with pepper spray, otherwise known as mace, you know the pain that it inflicts. So you also know that you may take a ride on that taser and get tased yourself, or you may get that spray in your eyes yourself. So we continually train to make sure that our deputies are the best that are out there. We don't have any issues with the community because we work so closely with them. We are straight up, we file our uses of force, we document everything in an electronic format, so we know exactly what force has been used, how it's been used, and what situations it's been used, so we can ensure that excessive force is rooted out of the department at all costs. Thank you.
Okay, Rand, this one's going to be for you to begin. What is your opinion of the unwritten law that law enforcement officers do not ticket or arrest other law enforcement officers for infractions of the law?
That's pretty old school stuff there. That doesn't apply like it used to. The younger generations that are in the law enforcement ranks certainly don't respect that like it was in, air quotes, the good old days. The days of, flipping the badge out, I'm the so-and-so department, you don't write me a ticket, those days are long gone. We train the deputy that they know whether they're going to issue a citation or a warning as they approach the vehicle. So before they get there, they already have their mind made up. Absence of any excuse, because that's part of the 7-step violator contact, is to find out what the reason for their emergency is if they're going fast. And the reason for that emergency can't be because I wanted to go fast and I'm a cop. That's not very well respected. The times changed in 2002 when we got racial profiling legislation that mandated that all agencies, unless they want to do Tier 2 racial profiling data, which nobody does, get video cameras in their cars. So the Sheriff's Office has been a 100% video department since somewhere around 2002, 2003. And we maintain that video, and it's been even enhanced to where they use it for much more than traffic stops. They use it for evidence collection on scenes, etc. But the video system really changed that because the officer's behavior is watched. It's monitored by their supervisors. It's monitored by us all the way up through the chain of command. So supervisors are mandated to go in and do spot checks, and if they see issues such as that, then they're to be addressed and reflected on evaluations. But the culture has changed. I think that unwritten rule is unwritten and not being applied in a lot of situations, and I'm a firm believer that the law is equal and applies to all. Thank you.
You ready? Well, I'm the chief of police in the city of Montgomery. Unfortunately, obviously not everyone thinks that way. I get a lot of phone calls, don't I? I'll talk to my sergeant and my officer in the back. Oh, your guy gave my guy a ticket the other day. So it still is out there. People still expect it. But the thing that I think has stopped most of that has been the video in the car. Each officer makes his or her determination of whether that person receives a warning or a ticket at that place. I do not second guess my officers at all. I make whatever they decide on that scene, unless we go back and they violated policy or we see something wrong, we'll discuss it with them. That's how a ticket stands. And I get lots of phone calls in 1 week at a time about how many tickets have been issued to different people, brothers and sisters and mothers and mother-in-laws from all over the place. But we don't let that happen anymore. So it just continues. People expect it, but we don't let it happen. But it is a problem. It's always been a problem, that occupational problem that we have with that. So we address it, we take care of it, and we just move on. Thank you.
All right, Jim, this one's yours. What is your plan to improve the deplorable response time for investigation of nonviolent crimes in the county?
I didn't know that was a question. The deplorable response time for nonviolent crimes in the county.
I didn't write it. I'm just
Okay.
reading.
I don't know, I'd have to beg to differ with that. I think that the men and women out there are working real hard. I know that the response times are difficult, and we've already addressed this with manpower. We talked about how much money, do we need to increase the budget? Well, if we want to get rid of deplorable response times, the only way to do it is to put the right amount of people on the job. And unfortunately, we have to then go to Commissioner's Court and ask for money to get the right amount of people, and then we got to train them to get them out there. So, just by getting a grant for the next 25 or 30 officers doesn't make it happen overnight. It does take time, but if we can get trained officers quickly, get them up to speed with the system that they have at the sheriff's office and get them out, that is about the best way you're going to fight horrible response times on nonviolent crimes. The other thing is that you need to give some responsibility to that deputy or officer on the street to go ahead and do the follow-up real quick, to come out there the next day and talk to the reportee and see if there's any additional information, and not let it sit for 3 and 4 and 5 days. So that response time is reflective on the number of people that you have that can do the job, and also on their ability not to be overloaded with calls and be able to get out there and do that investigation. If they're continually running back and forth and trying to have 3 and 4 calls holding on their dispatcher, then they can't get back out to do what they need to do. So what we need to do is lighten that load on them a little bit, because that's when we get out and start doing proactive policing, is when that load is lightened. The officer isn't running from call to call, but he is looking for that problem. He's trying to make contact with someone that's going to be out there trying to commit that theft or that theft of metal or anything else. And one of our officers did that the other day. He rode by and looked up, and there was a truck parked in the wrong spot, and he had time to go investigate it. And sure enough, he arrested 3 people for theft of metal, and they had it all in the back of their truck. So manpower is the issue, and that's about the only way you're going to get to solve this. Thank you.
Yeah, you have to look at first understand how dispatch calls work. They get prioritized. They come in either on 911 or through non-emergency lines at the sheriff's office. All of our dispatchers and call takers will take the call, process the calls, and then dispatch them out to the officers through their computers and over the radio. So the prioritization determines the response level. So if you've got a serious in-progress call, then obviously that's a higher priority call that would determine you're running lights and sirens, such as an assault in progress. Somebody needs help. That means get there as quickly as you can. So we do that, and we have a pretty good response time when it comes to those type of calls. Now, as you trickle down, it goes all the way down from past calls to just regular service calls, just somebody needing information or has a question. So we try to prioritize those and address those as the needs arise. Now, it's not uncommon for a deputy to be driving to, for example, a burglary past. You left on Friday for the weekend, you came home Sunday after the weekend was over and found that your garage had been broken into or something like that, and somebody stole a bicycle. So if the officer's en route to your call and then a higher priority call comes in, then obviously he's going to be pulled off of that and have to respond to those higher priority calls, thus making their response time to the nonviolent, especially the property crimes, suffer. But there is, other than the convenience of the citizenry, which we view you as our customers and we know this is important, but we have to deal with those life-saving issues first. Those are our top priority. So we'll get to you. We'll always work with you. We try to have supervisors call and try to explain the situation. But when you're just doing a data analysis, at times it does look like the responses are very protracted and unnecessary until you look at it and you understand the specific situations, which is, Captain, something I deal with on a daily basis. Thank you.
All right, I've been instructed that this is going to be the final question, and I think this is a very, very important question. Will each of you sign an agreement not to personally attack your opponent if asked to do so?
Absolutely. If we would get away from personal attacks and keep that from happening, I would be all for that. I feel that I've run my campaign very above board. No personal attacks have come from me, and I don't plan to use that as methodology moving forward through this. I have